All right. Well, first of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about your original career trajectory, which was not acting.
No.
Your family has deep roots in politics, and you're going to pursue a career in law. Were you planning on going into politics as well once you finish with your law career?
No, I don't think I was going to go into politics. I think the closest that I was considering would be lobbying. I thought that was pretty fun.
Okay.
But actually running for a position, I don't think so.
So well, first of all, what made you want to go into law then? What was what drew you to that career?
Definitely family. My dad's a lawyer, my uncle's a judge, my other uncle's an attorney. Yeah, it's just I grew up in that world, so it was familiar to me, and it was just an easy path.
Did you at what point did you say, this isn't for me? How far into law school were you?
Gosh, I think that was my second year. It was my second or third year, so I was almost done. And I don't quit anything. I see
Okay.
it through to the end. So I did that and immediately enrolled in acting classes, literally right when I graduated.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
What was the deciding factor for you that acting was your career choice?
I, I really had this epiphany moment in law school. I was doing an oral argument and it just sort of washed over me that for starters, I was acting right then and there. I'm
Sure.
playing to judge and jury. And then I started to really think about it, and I had kind of been choosing career paths based around movie characters.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and I hadn't really made that connection yet until that moment. And I realized, as an actor, I can do every sort of career path out
Right.
there. And yeah, that's kind of how I've realized acting was really what I wanted to pursue.
Was there any in particular roles or actors that you had kind of gravitated toward?
Yeah, so Nicole Kidman's performance in The Interpreter,
Sure.
that was a really big one for me. My undergrad was in international relations. I did Model United Nations, all of that. And then Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30. That was another really, huge role that impacted my life. Sicario, Emily Blunt, Salt, Angelina Jolie, really these,
Sure.
action political thrillers.
So how did the family take the news that you were not going to be following in the family footsteps?
They were 100% supportive.
Okay. Was there
Yes,
ever, I mean, law school is not cheap. I mean, you had to.
I know, right?
Was there any regret, like, oh, this is like money down the drain?
I know. I knew that I could, use my law degree in acting and really any sort of career path I chose if I necessarily didn't want to practice law. So I never thought that I was wasting money or, an investment education
Right.
wise. Yeah, it was really the best thing I ever did.
So you're starting over at this point, really. What was that transition like for you going into really an unknown? Did you start with acting classes? Did you start with theater? How did you actually get into the world of acting then?
I started with acting classes personally. I'd grown up around theater. My parents were really involved in the Idaho Shakespeare Festival. But I was just too shy to ever get up on stage. Um, but yeah, acting classes really just, I dove into that to just learn the basics and get a foundation. And then I started meeting people in the industry in Idaho, which is small. So there's not a whole
Okay.
lot of
Sure.
people. And networking, getting to know people, working on independent projects, school projects. I'd had an agent for modeling, so I told them I was interested in acting. So that transition with them helping me get auditions was relatively easy. But yeah, really just started doing the building block bases of what I needed to do to pursue this as a career.
I'd like to talk. You worked with, as far as getting your career advanced, Park Lincoln. Can you talk
Mhm.
about what impact she had on your career?
It's tremendous. Like when I met her, where I was in my career to where I am now, it's just sort of skyrocketed. I owe her a lot with helping me advance professionally as, a performer. So I decided I wanted to pursue acting full time in 2019, and my closest market was Salt Lake. So I
Okay.
moved to Salt Lake for about 6 months before COVID happened, and I had to move back home.
Good timing.
Right? Perfect timing. So I was in Idaho when I auditioned for the role in Ghost Party that brought me to Texas. And it was there that I met Lar and decided that I wanted to start training with her. So really my career started when I moved to Texas in the beginning of 2021.
Well, first of all, I had the pleasure of interviewing Lar a few years ago, and she's just lovely, and she was really
Okay.
wonderful to talk with.
Yeah.
Secondly, how did you find the film industry down in Texas? I mean, it seems to have been blossoming over the last decade or so.
Yes. I always get antsy around the fall. Like I need to go somewhere bigger to a bigger market, but I haven't had a reason to leave Texas yet. I'm booking well in Texas and I book well out of Texas. And, being smack dab middle of the country sort of helps with airfare. So,
That's fair.
yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, Texas film is kind of popping off a little bit. We've had some, great supporters of SB 22 and getting more tax incentives and really growing the industry in Texas. And I've definitely seen more work coming here.
You worked with Eric Roberts, who I also had the pleasure of interviewing as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to. What was the experience working with Eric Roberts? He's such a legend.
It was incredible. So he was one of the first, name type actors I got to work with on a film, and just watching him and his style, and he's really inclusive and funny. He's a funny guy.
I asked him what his criteria for choosing scripts are these days
Yeah.
at point in his career, and he said location. It's
Okay.
wherever he wants to visit, he goes. He takes the gig, which I thought was a pretty well,
That's
at
yeah,
this point in
that's
his career, why not?
great. Yeah, see the country that way
Uh,
for sure.
Um, you had a small role in Mosaic on HBO. You
Yeah.
shared the screen with Sharon Stone. But you worked with Steven Soderbergh.
Yes, that was an incredible
What was that
experience.
experience like? I mean, like it was a small role, but you still got to. I imagine you still got to have some interaction with him. What was like on set with him?
That was great. That was actually my first time being on a major set before. So I was really just like a sponge, just watching and absorbing and like uh, just taking it all in the moment. But, watching him work, watching him direct, and, talk to Sharon, talk to Michael Cerveris and a few of the other actors on set. It was really cool watching them all work. And I actually did make friends with Michael Cerveris, and we still, speak to today.
That's great.
Yeah, it's crazy, like the lifelong connections you can make on a film
Sure.
set.
Yeah, yeah. Terry Kaiser. You worked with Terry Kaiser before, and you're working with him again coming up. Am I correct?
Yes, yes, he's
I
great. He is a character.
He was good. I moderated a Weekend at Bernie's reunion panel last year, and
Cool.
so I got to chat with him for a little bit, and he was
Yeah.
wonderful. Can you talk about working with him on the various projects you've worked on him with?
I worked with him on Bad Bitch, which
Right.
is actually coming out May 16th on Prime. But he's so giving, I would say. If you have a question of acting or career, he really advises you. He refers you to, books, literature, classes. He's just really generous, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah.
1923. You had
Yeah.
a pretty memorable role. Pretty intense. It seemed like that whole scene seemed pretty intense. Can you talk about that? Because you did. There's a lot of acting without any real dialogue.
Hmm.
What was that experience like? 'Cause it seemed like it was, like I said, it was a pretty intense scene.
Yeah. It was incredibly intense, just being in, the tar and feathers and going to set and having, 100 plus extras there and all the crew. Um, it was it was an amazing day. It's a day I'll never forget. Everyone was very concerned about my well-being and
Sure.
making sure I was okay. But, Ben Richardson, the director, he was fantastic to work with. You know, we had the script, he had the vision, Taylor's vision, and everybody was on the same page. So there was no, questions about what should be done. We kind of all knew what we wanted to do and how to portray all of those emotions.
What was the makeup experience like? Because it seemed like it seemed lengthy. How long did it take you to get tarred and feathered in?
The whole process, I would say, was 4 hours.
Wow.
The painting, the sticky tar substance, which was hairspray,
Okay.
the feathers, and I had a wig on as well.
Right.
So yeah, it was about 4 hours on, 2 hours off.
How long were you on set for that day with all that stuff on?
It was a full day, you
Yeah.
know.
That's
Yeah,
had to been incredibly uncomfortable.
it wasn't too bad. Like I could sit down. I just had, plastic all around me, so
Sure.
I wouldn't
Okay. Yeah.
get
Well,
stuff on things.
you mentioned the number of extras. I mean, it was a pretty big scene.
Yeah.
Um, there had to been a lot of pressure for you at that point to deliver. I mean, I mean, time is money, and
Yes.
what was that? And you haven't been in the industry that long,
Hmm.
so I'm just curious as to your mindset as far as getting on set and nailing your performance. What kind of pressure were you under?
You know, we all put, I think a lot of pressure on ourselves to do everything right and be perfect all the time. At least I do. But when I got to set, I knew what I needed to do and I knew what the scene required. So I was pretty calm.
Oh, okay.
I tried to stay very present in the moment and what was going on around me and, what my character was feeling. And then just taking the direction from Ben, whether he needed me to look in a certain direction towards camera or be more expressive with my emotions and my body. But we all generally knew what needed to be delivered.
Right, right.
Yeah.
What kind of roles are you drawn to? What are you looking for right now?
Oh gosh, I love the dramatic, the dark roles. I always lean into those more, but I really, really want to do a Western because I love horseback riding. And I would love to do just a warm and fuzzy Christmas movie because I would say I always get the mean girl roles or the witch or the vampire, the horror genre, but it would be nice to show a little bit of the softer side of myself that I can be, I guess, kind of the girl next door a little bit. But yeah, I would love to do like a Christmas movie.
I worked on a Christmas movie years ago, and I tell you what, I'm here in Buffalo, New York, and
Oh,
they
okay.
shoot at least one a year here.
Yeah.
Well, those Christmas movies they come hot and heavy here.
Yes.
So yeah, well, that sounds like a nice goal.
Yeah.
What any comedy? Is there something you're interested in doing comedy at all?
If I do comedy, I would want it to be like a dry comedy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like slapstick's out of the question.
N- I mean, it's not nothing's out of the question, but I would say I gravitate more towards like Aubrey Plaza style.
Fair enough. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good. Um, you have a lot of projects coming up.
I do.
You have a
Yeah.
lot. You see some you've completed, some that are on deck. What can you talk about? I know some you probably can't talk about, but what do you have coming up that you're looking forward to people seeing?
Croatoan, that was the horror film that I shot last fall. So hopefully that'll be coming out sometime this fall. It's loosely based on the Roanoke colonists and their disappearance and the mysteries surrounding that, but in present day. I'm filming a movie called Run right now. It's an apocalyptic thriller. I'm the lead, and it kind of follows my character Claire and how she survives this alien invasion with kind of cannibalistic gangs after her. So I'm running all the time, go figure. But yeah, I'm really excited about that one. We're shooting here in Fort Worth.
Do you have any, I mean, you've already said, at this point, you have no need to leave Texas. Is LA on the horizon at all? Do you think you'll be heading out there at some point?
Yeah, I have filmed out there a little bit. I've gone back and forth. I did really consider moving out there at the end of last year, but with the devastation with the fires
Sure.
and just everything that happened, and I know they're kind of trying to rebuild a little bit with that. I don't think it's the right time for me to move out there, but eventually, I think I could see myself doing like 6 months, 9 months, sort of networking, getting my foot in the door because I do think they cast a lot of the leads out of LA
Sure.
still. So that would be my reason to move either to LA or New York and just get in that pool of actors for those kinds of roles.
Have you learned anything about yourself that you maybe didn't know about yourself making this transition to acting?
I would say I'm more of an entrepreneur than I realized. I mean, I am my own business. So I've learned a lot about that and networking and promoting yourself and not, I used to have a really hard time talking about myself. It feels like I'm gloating. But, if you look at it from a business standpoint, you're really not. You're just talking about your work and your
Right.
job and, what you want to do and where you want to go. So I've learned to, be able to do that better. And traveling, I'm not afraid to just pick up and go places. If you book a job, you've got to be ready to go.
Right.
You can't make excuses in this business. I think a lot of actors put blocks and stops on themselves of why they can't do something, and you're never going to get anywhere if you do that. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk, and congratulations on your success so far, and good luck with the
Thank
future
you.
endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye now.